If you're reading this, you know I'm being held against my will and being forced to write yet another artist statement. I do not know how long I've been here, but I do know that I have not lost any weight. I have always believed that weight loss is the only benefit for being held for ransom. I'm allowed to leave the facility once a week to look for supplies to make what I consider art. And from what I understand, if they don't take me out, I have nothing to do, and the guards have grown tired of me recapping the early 90s TV show Northern Exposure and singing the entire soundtrack of The Sound of Music on repeat from start to finish. I personally could never grow weary of Dr. Fleischman's neurotic antics or listening to Rolf sing 16 going on 17 to Liesel, but hey, some people like some things. On my days out, I enjoy long walks through junkyards and flea markets. I find it romantic, but none of the guards will ever hold hands with me. The best part of those days is when I see an object that might look useless to anyone else, and I begin to imagine a story in my head, and the object becomes the center of an artwork embedded in a joke. I will collect these objects and bring them back to my studio. Yes, I have a studio. It's currently in a cave at the top of a mountain that has a beautiful view of a factory in a tundra. The view is quite breathtaking once you learn to live with the screaming and constant gunfire. During those times, I've learned to immerse myself in my work and begin imagining worlds that are very different from my current situation. Sometimes I build, and other times I paint or sculpt, depending on what best suits my fantasy. I have trouble executing my narrative if I can only use one category of fine art, so I simply try to use what's best for the occasion. My roommate Dimitri is my biggest supporter despite our language barrier. He is constantly giving me encouraging feedback in what I like to call the Russian linguistic embrace. Most of his critiques are long, passionate ramblings that I do not understand, but he always grabs me by my shoulders in the end with tears in his eyes, and he repeats over and over again.
Твои мозги сделаны из ослиного дерьма.
His admiration and infatuation with my work inspires me to stick to my artistic beliefs. I cannot say enough. If it weren't for Dimitri, I wouldn't be the man I am today. He reminds me I am one of the greatest artists of my time and that I should never forget my art is concept driven, so aesthetics are secondary. But I should also remember to take pride in my craftsmanship. I make things that surprise people and leave a long lasting memory. This can be achieved with humor, surprise, or fear, and I'm not against being a chameleon. Most of all, my artwork is entertaining and thought provoking. Enter with an open mind and remember that art can be more. Art can be infinite. Hi, I'm Charlie Gauthier. Welcome to my 45-hour review. In your packets, you have a list of my artwork, and I also added a photograph that has numbers on it that correspond with that list, so you should be able to follow along with which piece is which. I have 10 total pieces, 4 wall hanging, 2 sculptures, and 4 more on the wall. I'm going to try to go through all of them really quickly and then come back and do a formal analysis on number 6. Here's number 10. I really like this piece mostly for its simplicity. My work is highly conceptual, but I believe that concept can be also simple. And the concept behind this one is simply 2D playing with 3D and a little girl being thrown up in the air by her mother. And I just like how joyous and happy this piece is. I made it from objects that I found and reassembled. This and 3 other pieces are pieces I made that was about I have 2 young children, and during the pandemic, how difficult it was for them to miss the socialization periods of their life. You know, when you're you know, less than, my son is 5 and my daughter's 9. So if you're less than 10, you know, missing 2 years of being with your friends and being in school is difficult. So this image of my son is over a cabbage grater, which I found at a flea market. And obviously, if you want balance in your life, levels might help you with that. This is another piece from that same concept. These are photographs that I took of my son just simply jumping on the bed by himself. It seems really joyous, but it's kind of sad, you know, that you just have to play. They had to play by themselves for so long. Aesthetically, I think this might be the strongest of all the pieces. This is number 6. This is the one I'm going to come back and do a longer formal analysis on. This is the first of the 2 sculptures. The concept behind this one was I took a large box that I found at an estate sale. It was about 2 by 3 by 12 inches deep, and I cut it all apart and I reassembled it into the smallest cube that I could find, and I wanted it to be floating in the ocean, and I think I achieved that look pretty well. This figure reminds me of my grandfather, and he and I rehabbed cars together when I was young, and so that's why I put the Plymouth was my dad's first car, and I have a Bronco on the side of this, which was my first vehicle. This one also reminds me of my grandfather because he was in the 8th Regiment of the Air Force, and he was a bomber pilot. He flew the Air Fortress B-17s, and they dropped these bombs on France, which is where my family is originally from. So anyway, the concept behind this is I thought it was interesting how kids are so used to seeing war on TV now these days. We all are, and I figured why not just advertise on the weapons. So we made a Captain Crunch cereal advertisement on a World War II gravity bomb, and I used methods for painting cars or motorcycle tanks when painting this. I call this "Oops, Only War Crimes." Then we got this one, which goes back to the concept from the pandemic. Same images. What I really liked about this one is I found a deck that had fallen off an old building in downtown St. Louis, and had laid in the sun for so long that the sun bleached parts of the boards and made really interesting marks, and it was really fun to work with something that already had interesting mark making, and I could put it together to try to enhance that. This is the first of my 2 in this series that are interactive and that I encourage people to touch. Once I have this in a show, I'm going to have it, a sign that says "Please do touch." I love finding all these old boxes with interesting writing on them. North St. Louis Bottling Company, seltzer and soda, and sometimes you find the dates are from the 20s. I believe this one was from Prohibition. Since I want people to touch this actually has a door that opens up and into an interior that I completely rehabbed with oak hardwood flooring to make it look like a house that had just been rehabbed. And then I put in here, "Do not push the button." I really, I like the idea of telling people they can touch something, and then when they get inside, telling them not to touch that. I think that's one of those things that can be hard to ignore. This is the last in the 4 of the, from the pandemic. This one's kind of special to me specifically because this hammer is a hammer I've had for maybe 30 years, and it's spent a few winters outside at one point. It's really rough. There's nothing more utilitarian than a hammer, especially one that's effective and works well. And this particular hammer I carried on my belt when I built a cabin for my parents and 2 different houses that my family has lived in. So I kind of thought it would be cool to take a old beat up hammer and clean it up and make it pristine and showcase it as a piece of art. And with my son. Here is the last of the pieces. This is another one that I encourage people to touch. I even wrote it on the front here. You can touch this one. Then I have a narrator. I have narrators on this one and this one. This narrator, his tie is pointing at the button that you are not supposed to push. This one is looking at a fingerprint. So if you push on that fingerprint, the door opens, the lights turn on, and you see a mob boss in mouse form, and you see that one of my narrators has been murdered in a mousetrap. Back here at number 6, this is the one I will be doing a formal analysis on. This is just personally my favorite piece out of all these. It's just, again, sort of like number 10, I just like the simplicity of the concept and how well it works. So from the front, you just see the bottom of what was an artillery box. I actually beat it with chains and then polyurethane and stained it. It's really simple and just a really beautiful look aesthetically. This guy was a sculpture, a wooden sculpture that I found that was kind of on the top of a statue, like a wooden looking statue. I cut it apart and I reassembled some of the joints, like at the hip and the feet, so that he could have the stance of looking around a corner, which I think I achieved really well if you look at it like this. I also love the way he's just floating in the air, and that gives the bottom of the piece that grounding effect, that's the bottom of the earth. The story concept behind this is that he's an old man who lives in a small town, and he's been a hard worker his entire life, and he's a good guy, and one day he hears something on the other side of the building, and he's gone looking to see what it is, and there are soldiers on the other side, so he may be meeting his impending doom. For some reason, this idea reminded me of the Cold War between Russia and America from the 80s, so I made some 80s advertisements. Tab soda was I think the first diet soda that I can remember anyway. I was pretty young back then, but my mom used to play racquetball and drink Tab soda, and while she was playing, I would steal sips of it. So I had a personal touch with Tab soda. We called it Pop where I came from, Minnesota. And then on this side, I put the classic Budweiser Eagle. Again, another thing that's been kind of timeless. It definitely was around in the 80s, and I'm from St. Louis. And Budweiser is the biggest thing we have here in town. I really like this piece. Thank you for your time. I don't know if I mentioned this when I came by this piece the first time, but it's called Unwanted Attention. And if you remember, it has this smiley face bouncy ball on the front, and you can interact with it. If you recall, there is a button and it says do not push this button. I love that people can take a look at it and enjoy it and touch it. And I encourage people not to push this button because if you are at a show and you're seeing this in a gallery, you push the button and 600 bouncy balls fall out of a trapdoor. Thanks for your time.